Tyler Van Horn versus Brianna Heights. Attorney Mark Robinson for plaintiff.
Good morning to everyone.
Good morning, Your Honor.
I'll ask you, Mr. Robinson, are you ready to proceed?
We are, Your Honor.
And Ms. Heights, are you ready to proceed?
I am, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Robinson, will you wish to make an opening statement or proceed to proofs?
I will waive the opening statement and just proceed to proofs.
Okay. Ms. Heights, you have an opportunity to make an opening statement, or you can reserve your opening statement until after plaintiff has presented all their proofs, or you can waive your opening statement.
I will reserve my opening statement, please.
Okay. We'll put that down. Okay, Mr. Robinson, you can proceed to your proofs.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Call your first witness then.
So I'll call Tyler. I'll call my client to the stand, Your Honor.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor. Tyler, you've petitioned for custody of your daughter. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And Gracie is how old?
9 years old.
And up until August 1st of this year, Gracie was living with your mother, who was a limited guardian.
Correct.
See, is that correct? Yeah. Okay. And since the guardianship terminated, Gracie has lived principally with you pursuant to a court order. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. How are you and Gracie doing?
We're doing good. This morning I woke her up for school and got her ready and off to the bus, and she's loving it at school. She's doing great. We got her test results back from tests they'd taken last year, and she's above average in math and English. Actually, very, very good in math and English.
Okay. Well, why don't you describe Gracie's typical day living with you?
So either my fiance or my grandmother will take her to the bus or to the school. About 7:55 is the bus drop or the bus pickup, and 8:30 is when she can be dropped off for school. She gets home from school. She goes to her grandma Michelle's. After school, she rides the bus there, where I will come and pick her up when I get out of work about 5:30. And then we come home and she'll have a snack and decompress a little bit, play on her tablet. We might watch a movie or something. We'll have dinner, and then she starts getting ready for bed, shower and getting PJs on and stuff around 8 o'clock. And then she lays in bed at 8:30 and usually asleep before 9.
Okay. Now, are you the one getting her around in the morning?
This morning I did. If I'm not here in the morning, it's my fiance, or like I said, my grandmother has been coming here and getting her around in the morning when we both have to work early.
Okay. Where do you work?
I work in Lansing right now. It's about a 45-minute drive from my house.
Okay. And how long have you been working there?
I started at this job site in May. I've just started with a new company as well. It's in the same trade, but I switched companies.
Okay. What trade is that?
A sprinkler fitter.
Okay. You're in the construction industry.
Yes.
And so your job sites can change?
Yes.
And what are your hours of employment typically?
Normal working hours are from 6 to 5. Anything outside of that is considered not normal.
Okay. And is that Monday through Friday?
Yes.
Okay. Do you do much work on the weekends?
I usually work every other Saturday. With school starting and Gracie being down at her mom's, I work the weekends that she's down at her mom's, but I stay home on the weekends I have her.
Okay. Does Gracie seem to like attending Marshall Public Schools?
She does. She seems to like it.
Okay. Has she voiced any complaints to you about it?
Nothing that would be concerning other than the what I would call normal kid stuff. Oh, this kid was mean to me at recess or whatever. Some half made up story that they'll give you and they think it's fun.
Does she have many friends at school?
She has some good friends. She has 2 main friends, Nevela and Reagan, and she's in class with Nevela, and she only gets a couple classes with Reagan.
Okay. Does she get to interact with them after school at all?
Sometimes, seldomly. Reagan's birthday is actually coming up, and Gracie will be going to her birthday party.
Okay. Does Gracie get to do many sleepovers?
She has done one sleepover with her friend Reagan, and that was it. But they do sleepovers at the campground when they used to go camping on the weekends over the summer.
Okay. Now, prior to the end of the guardianship, how involved were you in Gracie's life?
I would see her, 2 to 3 times a week. I would keep her on some weekends. She liked coming over and staying at my house. I would talk to her on the phone every night, every other night if I wasn't seeing her. I'd like to think I was pretty involved.
Did you FaceTime with her at all?
Yes, that's how I would communicate with her. If I would call her, it was over FaceTime.
And in fact, that last year, you were FaceTiming her every morning?
Yeah, I would FaceTime her in the morning at work. I was on a job site where I actually had service inside of the building. That doesn't usually happen. And I would get to FaceTime her in the morning before school.
And then would you also FaceTime her in the evening before she went to bed?
Yes.
Okay. Is Gracie was Gracie involved in any extracurricular activities like sports, soccer, that sort of thing?
Yeah, she's done volleyball camps and basketball camps and stuff like that. It's usually like one day every week over the summer, things like that. She hasn't been in any formal sports yet.
Okay. Does Gracie have a doctor that she sees when she needs to?
She does. It would be Dr. Grunderman with the Bronson Medical Associate Group.
Is that in Marshall?
Yep, it's over in Marshall.
Okay. Have you needed to take her there at all?
So my mom, up until, now I would, she'd be on my insurance and stuff and I would be the one to take her. But my mom would take her to her well child visits and stuff like that. And she just had a well child exam in August. And it's on my insurance and I got the bill for it. But I didn't take her to her. I was at work that day.
Okay. Does she have a dentist?
She does have the dentist. I don't know who the dentist's name is right off the top of my head. But when she goes to the dentist, she comes back all good. And I still believe she's never had a cavity, actually.
Does she have any other doctors you know about?
She has a therapist that she was seeing before the guardianship ended. I have her name right here. Sorry, I just have to look at it. Mrs. Wagner, Sydney Wagner, the Oakland Psychological Group.
And again, that's in Marshall?
Yep.
And why was she seeing a therapist?
Due to an incident she had at school in Marshall in the 3rd grade, the school guidance counselor thought she had a big imagination, too big, must be. She believed in Santa Claus and fairy tales and stuff like that. And she requested that we, break the news to Gracie that magic isn't real and stuff like that. And requested that we get her counseling. So that was under the advice of that school counselor, but we didn't use the school counselor. We went third party with the counseling.
Okay. Did the counselor agree with the guidance, or did the therapist agree with the guidance counselor's assessment of Gracie?
She did not.
So has the therapist indicated to you that Gracie's pretty much a normal kid?
Yes. And as far as the therapy goes, therapists like to do an end of evaluation, go a couple months past their last session and check in with the kid. And she would still need to do that. And that is something that we're still looking into.
Okay. And it's just not time for that yet.
Right.
Now, why do you believe it's best for Gracie that she remain in the Marshall area living with you instead of going off to Ohio?
Well, I believe it's best for Gracie because that's what she wants. This might be a better situation for her. I don't, it's not that I don't know, this is her life, and to uproot her life and move her away, nobody should want that.
Okay. Do you have a lot of family in the Marshall area?
We do have a lot of family. It's, me and my mom and her husband, and then my mom's mom is still alive. So she's got two great grandmothers still, my dad's family.
Does she spend a lot of time with your extended family?
She spends a lot of time with the great grandmas.
Okay.
Yes.
She has a close relationship with the great grandmothers?
Absolutely.
And she obviously has a close relationship with your mother.
Yes.
And is
I
your
would
mother,
almost say Grandma Michelle's her favorite.
so she's obviously continuing to interact with her mother,
Yes.
grandmother, on a regular basis.
Yes. Yep. She sees her every day after school. She's home.
And Gracie has a fairly stable home environment
She does.
in Calhoun County.
Yes.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, Ms. Heights, do you have any questions of the plaintiff?
No, I do not, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Van Horn, I have some questions. You said that you talked about the, that you have a stable home environment. How long have you lived where you're living at the current time?
In November will be 2 years. We just bought this house almost 2 years ago.
Okay. So you bought the house.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
buying, mortgage.
Correct. And you say we, who is we?
I say we, as in me and my fiance, but the house is solely in my name. And I'd pay the mortgage on it.
And how long have you had a relationship with your fiance?
A little over 4.5 years now. January will be 5.
So do you have any intent to move?
If we were to move, it would just be out into the country, but it would be the same county, same school district, things of that nature.
How is your physical and mental health, sir?
I would deem it good.
Do you have any recurring health issues or anything of that nature?
No, sir.
Have you had to see any mental health counselors or receive any treatment for mental health?
No, sir.
Have you had any criminal involvement?
No, sir.
Anything else that you would like me to be aware of, sir?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
With that, Mr. Robinson, is there anything else you'd like to go into?
Yes, just to clarify, in your home, does Gracie have her own bedroom?
She sure does. Own bedroom, bed, TV, air conditioner.
Is there a backyard and whatnot where she's got room to play?
Yeah, we have a decent sized backyard, and she can do whatever she wants out there. I've told her she can, I've gotten her chalk before when she was into chalk. I've told her she can do whatever she wants, decorate her room how she wants, and she's got big ideas.
Okay, nothing further, Your Honor.
Okay. Ms. Heights, anything else as a result of the court's questions or Mr. Robinson's additional questions?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Robinson, next witness.
Michelle Poe is supposed to be here. I don't know
Yes.
if she's in the waiting room, then I would call her as a witness. You are Tyler Van Horn's mother, is that correct?
That's correct.
And for 7 years or so, you were Gracie's limited guardian, is that correct?
That's correct.
And during those 7 years, she lived with you?
Yes, she did.
Okay. What sort of kid is Gracie?
Well, Gracie is a lot of fun. She's very witty. She really enjoys humor. She will tell jokes all the time. She's very outgoing and athletic. So we do a lot of outdoor things, riding scooters, riding bikes, swimming, camping, that type of stuff. Also doing things with the school, social things like a Lego club, Girls on the Run. So she's busy and active, and just always busy and active. When she lays down to go to bed at night, she's out like that.
So she seems to be a normal 9-year-old.
I would say yes, very typical.
Okay, and for the judge's benefit, what do you do for a living?
So I am employed by the state of Michigan as a foster care worker. I have been for 25 years. And so, yeah, I've worked with foster youth in out-of-home placement with parents, that type of stuff.
Okay. Um, what can you tell the court about Gracie's relationship with her father?
So Gracie does have a very good relationship with Tyler. They both have a lot of humor and sarcasm mixed within their conversations in their daily life. For the past probably at least 2 years, Tyler has called Gracie pretty much every morning and every night. So for the last 2 years, it's definitely been 2 to 3 years since COVID. It's definitely been much stronger. But yes, there's just a lot of contact between Tyler and Gracie.
And Tyler, when he would call Gracie, this was FaceTime with her?
Yes, most usually. Sometime if technology didn't work well, it would just be over the phone. But yes, 90% of the time, FaceTime. And
did Tyler take Gracie, spend time with her in person?
Oh, yes. So with physical proximity being as close as it was, Tyler has been able to pick up Gracie. He could take her in the evening out to eat, and then, bring her back here. And this is all during the guardianship. Starting August 1st, Gracie's, about a week after August 1st, Gracie's been pretty much with Tyler. I've actually seen her very little, but yes, he would pick her up and take her to his house or take her to activities, family functions, out to dinner. So there was a lot of contact. It wasn't just maybe like a weekend thing. It was more because, again, proximity wise, he was here and definitely making much more of an effort in the past 3 years.
Okay. And how is Gracie's relationship with her mother?
So Gracie also has a very good relationship with Brianna. I wouldn't say it's as close because the contact is not near as frequent. But that's what Gracie's known for the last 7 years is she goes and visits mom. There is, as Gracie has gotten older and won an iPad at school, there is some contact between Brianna and Gracie between visits, but it is very just minimal. It's not, it's not daily, it's not every other day, but there is some contact beyond the parenting time visits. Over FaceTime or over the phone with that tablet, it's just not as significant as it is with Tyler.
Okay. Well, have you seen Gracie since the guardianship terminated?
I have.
How regularly do you see her?
I've seen her. So I'm going to say maybe 6 times, whether it be in the morning to get on the bus or after school getting off the bus. I'm physically home at that time, and it's Marshall schools, whether you're Albion or Marshall. So I'm kind of like a backup help out person for the school bus. So I mean, I have seen her, and she has spent the night. I think once at the campground with my husband and I, and maybe once here at my house as well. So it really is. I mean, she just really is with Dad now. That is for sure.
Well, does Gracie seem happy when you see her?
She does. She does. She knows what the plans are. She will ask, "Hey, when's it time that I'm visiting with my mom again?" She does ask that. But she is very happy to be transferring her home from my house to her dad's house. And we have, she has acquired a plethora of belongings. So we are getting those over to her dad's house as time happens and things happen, like, okay, now it's getting colder. We're going to need to get the snow pants and the winter boots out. And so we're getting all the things over there. She seems to be doing fine with it.
Okay. Now, you and Gracie obviously are very close. Has she always confided in you?
So, yes, Gracie, I won't ask Gracie questions. Gracie spontaneously will give just disclosures of different things. And she has, throughout the course of knowing that, the guardianship with grandma's going to end and that, mommy and daddy both want her to live with them. And so she knows that this decision is being made by the judge. And so she at times will make comments to me.
Okay. Has Gracie talked to you about her living arrangements? Well, let's put it this way. Has Gracie confided with you about where she'd want to live?
She has.
And what did she tell you?
Okay, Mr. Robinson, I don't want you to delve into any hearsay, so.
Okay. That's fine, Your Honor. Does Gracie do well in school?
Yeah, Gracie does exceptionally well in school.
Okay. And she seems to like going to Marshall schools?
She does. I'm laughing because she's decided fourth grade is really different. I think there is a difference. I think in third grade, I still think there's warm, fuzzy cuddles, hugs. And I think in fourth grade, it's a little bit more, all right, you're getting older now. So she does well in school when she's given homework assignments or knows that a test is coming up. She's very excited to work with, well, she worked with me or with her grandpa to study for those things. And yes, she has friends at school, and then she participates in a variety of activities like Lego club and volleyball clinic, Girls on the Run. So she does like the school, but yeah, this year she's decided it might not be fun.
Mhm. Does Gracie have other family members in the area?
Yeah, there's considerable family in this area in, about a 3 or 4 town radius. Gracie has several grandparents as well as great grandparents still, cousins. Yeah, there are a lot of family connections. And so even past me, like I'm a person that will help out with getting on or off the bus, but there are great grandmothers that also at times will, if somebody has a doctor appointment, a great grandma may go to the school and pick up Gracie. And Gracie usually once a week or once every 2 weeks will likely spend the night with one of the great grandparents. And an aunt, she has an aunt that's local. She has an aunt and cousins that moved to Tennessee a few years ago, but they come back really regular. And so there's just, she has younger cousins and just a lot of relatives here.
And she interacts with these relatives on a regular basis.
Oh, she does. Absolutely. So even if she's not seeing, whether it be grandparents or the cousins who are Gracie's age, they're FaceTiming. So they'll talk over Facebook Messenger, over the phone. And yeah, they still very much maintain a very consistent relationship.
You've seen Tyler interact with Gracie. Do they seem to get along very well?
Well, they do. They do. Tyler picks up on Gracie's cues. If she's tired, if she's cranky, sometimes trying to figure out what's motivating Gracie to say or do what she's actually thinking can be, as with any child. And so Tyler does take the time to try to figure that out, and then to, make plans to, rectify the situation, what's going on. She hungry, she tired, she upset about something that happened.
Okay. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Okay. Ms. Heitz, do you have any questions?
I do. So Michelle, is it true that me and you had communication in January of 2021 about the guardianship status?
I don't remember specifically. I can just tell you, yes, we had talked about it. And I believe it was in 2021 that we had decided to increase Gracie's visits to your home in effort to prepare for transitioning her to you. Yes.
All right. Is it also true that you stated that Gracie would be better living with me at that time?
So at that time, I said, yes, that you had the home, you have income, and that Gracie shouldn't be raised by me, that Gracie should be raised by you or Tyler, ideally. Yeah.
All right. Is it also true that you said that Tyler does not have the contact points that he should have with her, in that I make more of an effort to see her and that it speaks volumes about my parenting?
So yes, that is why I want to, it was different. So in the beginning, it is true that when Gracie would visit with you, Brianna, you absolutely did put more effort into taking her to the fair, taking her camping. We saw photos of her at the beach. That really was true. Definitely in the beginning for the first several years. Tyler, and maybe Tyler will talk about it, Tyler was very mad at me and angry at me. And Tyler was not spending extra time or a lot of time with Gracie in the beginning in those first 4 or 5 years. He did make quite a change that has happened since COVID, around the time of COVID. And I know one of the reasons he was super mad at me was I was trying to help Gracie transition back to you and said, hey, she needs to come spend 2 weekends a month with you instead of just one. But all of that stopped. you didn't petition the court to end the guardianship then. And then Tyler said, look, Mom, if you don't want to be guardian, which it wasn't that I didn't want to be guardian, it's Gracie, as Gracie grows up, she processes why she lives with me and not you or Tyler. So Tyler said, Mom, I'm going to do this then. And so that was what initiated Tyler, I believe, to say, look, I guess Gracie's not going to live with my mom forever, and Brianna wants her to live there, but Tyler has his feelings that he is the best parent. So I want to answer your questions, Brianna. I do just want to be sure that I answer it fully. So I apologize if I got off track.
Is it also true, though, that I was the one that initiated to petition to end the guardianship?
Yes, that is my understanding, that you were the one that did do that this year in 2023.
All right. No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay. Ms. Poe, I do have a question. You stated that there were a period of time when the plaintiff, your son, was not involved in much. And when did that, I think you said during COVID or something, that changed?
So Tyler, so for the first probably 4 to 5 years, I don't want to, 4 to 5 years, Tyler did visit with Gracie. I don't want to act like he wasn't involved at all. That wouldn't be accurate. It was just very minimal. It was minimal. He saw her probably once a week, even though we did live geographically fairly close to one another. And then he did make quite a change when COVID came. So you're talking 2020. That's when he began taking Gracie much more regularly. And then it was the last 2 years that the morning and the evening FaceTime calls have been happening. I had another thought. I apologize, and it has escaped me. It was something that I really wanted to say.
Okay.
I can tell you that the reports that I completed for the guardianship, that I accurately reflected every year about the parenting time and what was happening. So right now, off the top of my head, I wouldn't do a good job of that, but I can just tell you that is a document I would assume is somewhere, because every year when it came time to that, and as I provided copies to Tyler and Brianna, they both had the opportunity to read that and see what I did have to say.
Okay. So you said that during this time, let's say during COVID, the same time that that your son's contact increased, what was the contact that Ms. Heights had?
So the contact with Brianna has pretty much been consistent throughout the entirety of the guardianship, which was typically once a month during school months. And we would try to pick a weekend where maybe Friday or Monday there wasn't school, or during the holidays, Gracie would go for likely a week. We were always very careful that any extra time during the school year that school wasn't being held, that we get Gracie to Brianna. During the summer, we have done different things, but she has done a week at a time for several of the summer months, each of the 3 months. So just because it's a 3-hour drive. So if you get Gracie there, she just, if all possible, we try to keep her there, for as best of a visit as possible. And then that's consistently been it. And maybe that was just due to the geographic, and it's a 3-hour drive.
Okay. Mr. Robinson, anything else?
Yeah, yes, a couple of questions. You testified that in 2021, you had a discussion with Ms. Heights about increasing her parenting or her time with the child from 1 weekend a month to 2 weekends a month. Is that correct?
That is correct.
But that never happened.
I think it did for a couple months, and let me tell you what happened. Gracie ended up having bed bugs at our house, at my mom's home. That's where we went to live during COVID. My mom is elderly. And at the point at which we discovered the bed bug infestation, it had been after a couple of extra visits that weren't normally happening. And backpack was going back and forth and some things like that. But it was isolated completely to the bed where Gracie slept. And I had reached out to Brianna that I was super devastated about this situation. And Brianna was not nearly alarmed as I would have hoped. And she had experience with bed bugs within her family, so she maybe wasn't worried about it. But when that happened, that's when I was a little concerned about things in that situation. Gracie, if I can say, For a lot of time, Gracie didn't have a bed. Gracie talked about sleeping on piles of clothes, which Gracie thought was a great adventure. But I don't know how, I only know what Gracie told me, was that she would sleep on piles of clothes, but that was early on. She just remembered that. So some situations did worry me at the house. And then, yes, that we did not keep up that extra visit. And then Brianna never did petition the court. So we didn't go further with that.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Okay. Ms. Heights, any additional questions?
Yes. Is it true that I have asked for weekends and have been shut down and told, no, that is too long of a time?
So I only know that happening one time, and that was recent. And that was because over the summer, as we were requested by Judge Jaconet to help Gracie transition to your home, because as of 8/1, Gracie did, need to come to be with you. Gracie was with you for 11 days straight. Gracie messaged me several times and said, Grandma, this is too long. I want to come home. So Gracie reaches out to me and told me she missed home and it was too long and she wanted to come back home. And so then, yes, when we were planning the next go around, we were like, 11 days is too much. It's just too much. Gracie's never known that long of a period of time.
Am I allowed to make a statement, Your Honor,
No,
about?
you're not. No, you're not. This is time to question the witness.
All right. Yes, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Thank you. Ms. Poe, that will conclude your testimony. Thank you, and you're excused. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Next witness, Mr. Robinson.
I have no further witnesses, Your Honor.
Okay. So do you rest your case, Mr. Robinson?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, with that, Ms. Heights, you can, at this point, if you wish, you can make your opening statement that you're reserved on, or you can proceed to your proofs.
Yes, Your Honor, I would like to make an opening statement.
Okay.
As we all know, we are all here for the good of Gracelyn and what is best for her. I have no objections that Tyler is not a good father. I believe 100% he is a good father, which is why I have always told him that I will do whatever I can possible to keep him involved in her life if she is living with me. No matter what, there's no, she can't come on this weekend if he asks me for a weekend. That shows in the fact that this past weekend was my weekend. However, he did have football tickets. So I allowed him to take my weekend because I don't want to deny her any experience and I don't want to deny her any time with her father. So I'm here today and I am seeking joint legal custody, and I would like full physical custody with reasonable parenting time for Tyler. And included in that reasonable parenting time be the school year with me, every other weekend with him, 6 to 6, just as I have, and the summers with him as well. And I am not seeking any kind of child support. I believe Tyler helps her. We have a very open agreement that, like for school supplies, I pay half and he paid half. And we are able to work together without any kind of agreement on that. So I do not wish to file for any kind of child support if I am granted full custody. And that is my opening statement.
Okay.
Um,
You can proceed your proofs now then, Ms. Heights.
All right. I had emailed over some exhibits, which I had a couple problems with. Am I allowed to use those or no?
Ma'am, you are not. When you look back at the notice to appear for trial, it had a notice in there that you had to have exhibits in 7 days prior to trial. Those came in late yesterday, so
Yes, Your Honor.
the court will not allow you to admit those.
All right. Clearly I am representing myself.
And
So-
ma'am, you can do that, but if you do that, you have risks that you are not complying with various court rules or, again, notices to parties, but the notice was on your notice, so you had notice of it, even though you're representing yourself.
No, I completely agree with that. And I even noted that I completely understand if it is inadmissible in court due to the late nature of it.
Okay.
But
You have testimony that you wish to produce, either yourself or some other witness.
I do have testimony for myself. That I would
Okay,
like
whenever
to-
you're ready, ma'am.
All right. Seeing as though I can't question myself, I just need to speak unto what I know to be true. And that is that I have an amazing relationship with my daughter. when she comes down, she knows that she can come to me and talk to me about anything. I openly talk to her about what she is going to be going through as a young woman, to where I have made her comfortable enough to be able to come to me when that time comes, whenever she starts changing. I just believe that I have been shot down in the past when it comes to my visits, not only just in this past summer, but summers before that. I have been denied weeks because of certain things going on, but those were never made up. And I have made a consistent effort to try and see my daughter more. I also, with my employment, I am part-time. However, I could have up to full-time hours. If I tell them that I would like more days, they put me on more days. However, I have a very flexible schedule, and I work very closely with my boss to be able to have that flexible schedule. If my other kids, they're in preschool 3 days a week. I am able, if there's an emergency, I am able to leave work and go get them if need be. Whenever I am working, my hours, the restaurant is open from 11 a.m. to 7:30 at night, Tuesday through Saturday. So I'm usually working those days. However, if I know Gracie is coming down, I can request that I do not work that weekend, which is what I normally do unless it is an all hands on deck weekend. But when I am at work, Johnny, who is my significant other, and has been for more than 6 years, he is with the kids at home. And if they are not with him, then they are with his mom or his grandma, who all of my kids, including Gracelyn, have a very close relationship with. Down here, Gracie does have a very, very, very close relationship with her cousin Olivia, who is 6 months older than her. This is my sister's daughter. She will often go over and have sleepovers with my sister and Olivia. She greatly enjoys that. As soon as I mention, would you like to go sleep over there? It is immediately, yes, I can't wait to hang out with her. Same goes for seeing Grandma Faye, who is Johnny's grandma. So it's great grandma to Gracelyn. She enjoys going over there and hanging out in the garden and talking to Grandma Faye, and she does confide in Grandma Faye a lot of the times. As for doctors, I was establishing a doctor for her in my week of having her. I started planning in the middle of the summer. However, I have had to take her to the hospital before. I believe it was in the summer of 2022. She fell and broke her arm at my house. And I took her to the emergency room that night. And the next day I took her into Ohio Institute of Orthopedics and got her cast on, which I paid extra money for to make sure she had a good summer because it was a waterproof cast. And then I also took her for her appointment to take off that cast. With any emergencies that have come up, I have been able to provide immediate relief for her. I have noticed that sometimes she has some anxiety that builds up and she will have an outburst. I have been able to successfully calm her down many times by talking to her and praying with her and explaining to her what is going on. So I do feel as though she can trust and love me. As for what Michelle said she slept on a pile of clothes, that is not true. At that point in time, we were living with Johnny's mother, and I did not have my other two children yet. And when Gracie would come to stay, I would make her a bed on my floor of blankets and a little mattress because I did not feel as though it was an appropriate time I didn't have the space for a bed. However, we made room in the upcoming months when she was transitioning more. And we lived with Johnny's mom for 5 years. And she stayed at his mom's house for a length of 6 months before we got her a bed. However, that was rectified. I moved her into the spare bedroom after Johnny's sister moved out. And she had her own space there. I just wanted to clarify on that situation. As far as sports, Gracie did do dance for 3 years, which I did come up to her dance recitals for. I drove to Michigan for the dance recitals. So any big event that she has up there, I have attended for her. And that is all for my opening statement, Your Honor.
Well, that's your testimony, not open.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's all for my testimony. Your
Okay.
Honor.
Mr. Robinson, any cross-examination?
Yes. You say you had 2 other kids.
I do.
How old are they?
Hazel is 4 years old and Johnny Jr. is 3 years old.
Okay. These are, normal kids, high energy.
Yeah, very much so.
Okay. How long have you lived in your current home?
In our current home, we moved the week before Christmas of 2022.
Okay.
So approximately
9 months.
9 months.
Okay. How many bedrooms in that house?
There are 3.
Okay, so you and Johnny are in one,
Right. Gracie has her own room.
and the
And-
other 2 share.
Correct.
Okay. Has Tyler ever refused you any contact with your daughter?
No, he does not.
Okay, I have no further questions.
Ms. Heights, I do briefly, you stated that you were employed at, it sounded like you were employed at a restaurant. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And what is your average weekly income?
My average weekly income clearly depends on the business. During slow season and busy season. On busy season, it can be up to $800 a week. During slow season, it could be as low as $300.
And let's say in the last, when you file your taxes for 2022,
Mhm.
what did you designate as your income?
My income on my taxes on my W-2 that I got from work, because all my tips are claimed, it was just under 16,000.
Okay. And what's your normal, you say you work part-time, what is your normal hours of work?
My normal hours of work, if I'm working a night shift, is 2 to 8 or 2 to 9.
Okay, give me your average weekly hours.
Amount of hours. About 24 to 25.
Okay. Okay, I have nothing further. Mr. Robinson, anything else as a result of my questions?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Any other witnesses that you have?
I do not have any witnesses today.
Okay, so you rest your case then, ma'am?
I do.
Okay. Mr. Robinson, any rebuttal?
Yes, I'd like to recall my client for a couple of questions.
Okay, Mr. Van Horn, you're still under oath. You understand that?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Tyler, you heard Ms. Heights talk about Brittany having anxiety attacks and she having to talk her down. Has she had any anxiety attacks while living with you?
Not while living with me. I've seen one while we were out to eat at a restaurant. She was breathing very heavily and wasn't responding and just looked like she was having a panic attack. I took her out of the restaurant. We sat on the bench out front. I rubbed down her back and she calmed down in a matter of a minute or two. And we went back inside the restaurant and kept eating.
Okay. Now, your proposal is that the 2 of you share legal custody of your daughter, but that you have primary physical custody. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that what you propose is that Gracie would continue to visit with her mother on an every other weekend basis during the school year, and that Gracie would also spend half the winter recess on an alternating basis with her mother, and that you would also alternate spring breaks so that one year you'd have Gracie, the next year Ms. Heights would have her. And then in the winter or the summer recess, Gracie would live with her mother every other week. Is that what you're asking the court to order?
Yes, that's correct.
And you are agreeable to continue meeting Ms. Heights at a convenient location somewhere in between so that, you know.
Yes.
Okay. And you've been doing that for years.
Yes, that's the way we've always done it. Was we meet, I believe it's about halfway. It's in Bryan, Ohio at the Walmart.
Okay. And Gracie doesn't seem to mind the drive.
She complains about the drive, as I think any kid would, because it's a long drive, but no, she would much rather, do the drive because she wants to go see her mom. So yes, she complains about it, but no, she doesn't mind it.
Okay. And you have no plans on denying Ms. Heights time with her daughter, do you?
No, I don't. Like Miss Heights said, she just let Graceland stay here on her weekend because we had tickets to the Michigan football game. And if she was to ask me for a specific weekend because she's got something going on, it's of course a yes.
Okay. And if she wants to FaceTime with her daughter every
Absolutely.
evening, you don't have a problem with that?
No, absolutely not. She's free to call whenever.
Okay. And that you wouldn't object to the judge including such a provision in any order about custody?
No, that's fine. You can put that in there.
Okay. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Okay. Ms. Heights, any additional questions?
I do not.
Okay. I do briefly, sir. When we went through your direct testimony, you did not state at any point what your income is, and if you would, what income did you have in 2022?
Me?
Yes.
2022, I think I grossed 55,000,
Okay.
somewhere in that ballpark.
And is that normal average income?
That is, but with my new job that I just got, I got a pretty hefty pay increase. I have not worked a full year there, so I don't know what a year salary looks like quite yet.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions, Mr. Robinson?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Heights?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Okay, thank you. It looks like that concludes the proofs in this matter. Mr. Robinson, wish to make a closing statement?
Briefly, Your Honor. I think it's apparent from the testimony that these parents both love Gracie. And from what I heard, it's not hard to love a kid like Gracie. But the real issue here is what's going to be Gracie's new home? Or whether really, why should we make Gracie go to a new home? Because that's what's really happening here. Gracie's home, and I think Michelle Poe said when she was complaining about spending 11 days with mom that she wanted to come home. The Marshall area, living with her mother, her grandmother, and her father, that's home. It's where she's got her most significant contacts. Her most significant life has lived here. She has her doctors. She's got her school. She's doing very well in school. She's got a lot of friends. She's involved in a lot of school activities and extracurricular activities. All of that will be lost if we have her go live with her mother on a full-time basis. I think it's in Gracie's best interest that we continue the previous order of the court and include provisions for alternate holidays as the usual course, giving mother half of the winter break, alternate spring breaks, and then over the summer, every other week. And, and giving her, unlimited access by phone with her daughter. I believe that's in Gracie's best interest. I think she's going to thrive there. I have no doubt that Ms. Heights has a wonderful home for her to move to, but there are two younger siblings, a 3 and 4-year-old. They take a lot of focus to raise, and Gracie will be left out. I've seen that far too often when, the older half sibling gets moved in and they start to feel a little left out because the other kids require the attention, and they're used to being the center of attention. Gracie was the center of attention while living with grandma. She'll be the center of attention while living with Tyler. her father. So I would ask that the court continue its earlier motion with the changes allowing for extended parenting time.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Heights, any closing argument?
I have a very brief closing statement as well.
Okay.
A love in a mother's heart is not limited to just one or two children. It is extended to all of her children. And I believe it's in Gracie's best interest to move here with me and her siblings to establish a strong bond with her siblings, because I grew up with 5 other siblings and never once did I feel left out. Some of my fondest memories were with my siblings. Those were my first relationships that I grew. And we are still very close to this day, and I lean on them. Your Honor, I just want my house to feel full again. And with Gracie, my heart is full when she's here. And I want the responsibility to be her mother again, fully, to teach her what a woman is. That is my responsibility. And I gave that up for too long, which I regret. However, this is my chance to rectify that and to step up fully and be her mother. And that is it, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Mr. Robinson?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Well, court will state in this matter that this is a very, not the typical case, and is very unusual in that the court would note that there was a guardianship in this matter that was entered back in June of 2016, placing Graceland with Miss Poe, that she remained there until just recently. I believe it was August 1 of this year. And she is now 9 years old. So Graceland has spent almost all of her life in the care of the paternal grandmother in the Marshall area. This is unusual because the court would note that there was a motion hearing on August 7, 2023, wherein the court entered a temporary order granting the parties joint legal custody and physical custody to the plaintiff with standard parenting time to the defendant. In these custody cases, court has to first determine determine if there is an established custodial environment. An established custodial environment exists if over an appreciable time the child naturally looks to the custodian in that environment for guidance, discipline, necessities of life, and parental comfort. The statute provides that the age of the child, the physical environment, and the inclination of the custodian and the child as to the permanency of the relationship shall be considered. The mere fact that the child resides in one home in and of itself is not dispositive of the established custodial environment, in that it can exist in more than one home. If the court had to make that determination as to the established custodial environment, clearly in this case, the established custodial environment would be with the paternal grandmother. The paternal grandmother was the one that, again, provided for all the necessities of Graceland for 7 years of her 9-year life. That she was the one that did everything and provided everything. And as her testimony shows, the parties were in and out of Graceland's life. And sometimes, as she stated, that the relationship and the involvement of the defendant was pretty consistent, but it was on a limited basis. 1 weekend per month, and some calls, and then those increased a little bit, and then they tried to work some other weekends in. But again, it was minimal involvement. The court would note that her testimony was that at least for a substantial number of years, that the plaintiff was minimally involved, that he might have Graceland in his care for maybe one day a week or some limited amount of time, but that did increase over the past 2 years, in which he would have more frequent contact, that he would call her every morning and call her every evening, etc. And I'm not going to go in and reiterate all of the testimony, because if I did, we'd have to spend another hour or so here just going through every bit of testimony. So I'm going to characterize some of that. But the court does note, when I look at, again, the testimony of all the witnesses in this matter, clearly the court finds that there is not an established custodial environment with either of the parties. As a result, if there is no established custodial environment, then the court has to determine custody based upon a preponderance of evidence as opposed to clear and convincing evidence. In this matter, a court would note as well that the court, pursuant to MCL 772.26a, has to consider an award of joint custody, and she'll state on the record why the court should grant it or not grant it. In joint custody, the question is not whether the parents can cooperate on all issues, but whether they generally, well, it's whether they can cooperate and not whether they get along. In this case, the court is heartened by the fact that it does appear that the parties are able to get along and have had a good relationship in this particular matter as it relates to Graceland. And that's extremely important as we go forward, because of the fact that the court, obviously, they're going to have times where they have to cooperate. They have to, address various issues, and it's going to be extremely important that they cooperate. The court, in determining custody, has to look at the factors under the Child Custody Act, and that is, again, provided for under MCL 722.23, and I'll go through those factors at this time. The first factor is the love, affection, and other emotional ties existing between the parties involved in the child. It does appear that in this particular case that each of the parties has exhibited love, affection, and other emotional ties existing between the parties and Graceland in this case. They have, notwithstanding the fact that she was in that guardianship action, which she was in the care of the paternal grandmother, they did have contact. Again, that contact varied, as I stated previously, but they did continue to have contact during this particular period of time. And they, in fact, did have, and it does appear based upon the testimony that, again, although the parties didn't say anything as it relates to love, affection, emotional ties, they did demonstrate through their testimony that they have a good relationship with Graceland. So the court's going to find that this factor weighs equally as to both parties. The next factor is the capacity and disposition of the parties involved to give the child love, affection, guidance, and continuation in the education and raising the child in a particular religion or creed. There's been no testimony about any religious upbringing or involvement, so the court's not going to consider that. As it relates to love, affection, and guidance, it does appear that the parties have been able to provide that, and that, in fact, that they have done so with Graceland. As it relates to continuation of the education, clearly in this matter that Graceland is attending the Marshall area schools, and if she in fact remains, or if she was with the plaintiff, she would continue in that school district. He talked about that she has a regular, I guess you say, schedule of schools that, in fact, if he's not available, then the grandmother or the great grandmothers will be with Graceland while they're waiting for the bus. She gets on the bus. She gets off the bus at the great grandmother's home. Then he picks up the child about 5:30 after work, and in fact, there is again a normal schedule through that school district. Whereas if she did go to the defendant, then she would have to get acclimated to a new school, and we don't know much of anything about that particular schooling, as there's been no testimony. The court will find that this factor does, because of the educational issue, does slightly weigh in favor of the plaintiff father. The next factor is the capacity and disposition of the parties involved to provide the child with food, clothing, medical care, and other remedial care recognized or permitted under the laws of the state in place of medical care and other material needs. It does appear that when Ray Graceland is with both parties, that they have provided for the material needs in this matter. The testimony of the plaintiff is that, again, that Graceland is covered by his insurance, that she goes to Bronson Hospital, Dr. Gruderman, for child check. She just had that. He wasn't aware of the dentist, but he did know she had a dentist, and also noted that for a period of time, as a result of a referral from the school counselor, she did see Cindy Wagner at Oaklawn as far as some therapy. Testimony of the defendant was that she was looking at establishing a doctor in Ohio, and but that she had in 2022 had received medical attention for Graceland when she broke her arm, and so the court is taking that into consideration. It looks like that the parties have both provided for the medical care of Graceland. However, the court would note again, because of the guardianship and her involvement in the paternal grandmother's home, that it does appear that the medical care has been consistently with the the care providers and the medical providers in Marshall area. So the court will find that that factor does slightly favor the plaintiff father. The next factor is the length of time the child has lived in a stable, satisfactory environment, and the desirability of maintaining continuity. In this particular matter, the testimony has shown that, again, due to the guardianship, she has not had much of a stable environment with either of the parties. The court would note, however, that during at least the past 2 years, that the involvement of the plaintiff has been pretty regular, that she has been in his home 1 or 2 nights per week, another time as well. And but again, that's on a parenting time schedule, just as the schedule has been with the defendant, where it's 1 weekend per month. And so the court doesn't find either of those times to be substantial, but again, they have been pretty regular. And as a result, the court will find that this factor weighs equally as to both parties, notwithstanding the fact that she has been for about the last month in the care, a little less than that, because I think it was Ms. Poe's testimony that changed about a week after the termination. So that would have been still early August, but it's only been a few weeks there. So the court's not finding that to be really substantial in this matter, and they're going to weigh this factor equally as to both parties. Next factor is the moral fitness of the parties involved. There's been no testimony about moral fitness, so the court will not consider that. The physical and mental health of the parties is the next factor. Court had questioned Mr. Van Horn about physical and mental health, and he has testified that he does not have any physical or mental health issues. There's been no testimony from Ms. Heights about that issue, or nor from the plaintiff about her physical or mental health. The court's going to not consider this factor, as there's been very little, if any, testimony about it, and that would not preponderate in either party's favor. So the court will not consider that. The next factor is the homeschool and community record of the child. The testimony in this particular case is probably more significant in this matter. That testimony of the plaintiff is that Graceland is in the Marshall schools, that she does have, as she said, 2 good friends, that he is, one of the friends is having a birthday that Graceland goes to, is going to that birthday party, that she has had sleepovers with the friends, although it's been minimal, but she did have that she has been involved in various extracurricular activities in Marshall, volleyball camp, that she'd been involved in other activities as well, as far as Girls on the Run, a Lego club, and other things of that nature. And she has been effectively in the Marshall community her entire life. And as a result, the court will find that this factor does weigh in favor of the plaintiff father. The next factor is the reasonable preference of the child. The court had opportunity to interview Graceland, found her to be very fun and a very nice child. And so I did taking into account her preference in the consideration of this matter. The next factor is the willingness and ability of each of the parents to facilitate and encourage a close and continued parent-child relationship between the child and the other parent. It does appear, based upon the testimony of both parties, that they have been involved and that they have been flexible. The most recent time would have been just the last weekend, when the plaintiff had football tickets, and apparently it was the defendant's weekend. She was willing to cooperate and change those weekends so that Graceland could go to that football game. The plaintiff has professed that he be willing to switch times likewise with her, and it doesn't appear that there has been any problems as it relates to the sharing of the parenting time between the parties. The only negative would have been Ms. Heights testifying that she wanted some more time, and in the summer, apparently another week, and that was not granted. I think that, however, was time when the child was with the paternal grandmother, and she said that based upon the one time when Ms. Heights had 11 days and Graceland had complained that it was too long and she wanted to come home, that is the reason she didn't grant that extended time. But it does appear that both of the parties have been attentive to and willing to facilitate a relationship between Graceland and the other party. The court will weigh this factor equally as to both parties. The next factor is domestic violence, regardless of whether the violence was directed against or witnessed by the child. There's been no testimony about domestic violence, so the court will not consider that factor. The next factor is any other factor considered by the court to be relevant in the particular parent-child or the custody dispute in this matter. And obviously, as I've alluded to and say, the other factors are that Graceland had been in the care of the paternal grandmother for 7 of her 9 years, that she is ingrained in the Marshall community, that she has substantial amount of familial ties in the community. She has she has grandparents, great-grandparents, she has aunt, cousins. Court notes as well that the defendant testified that she has there's an aunt in or close to her as well, and that there are familial ties in Ohio as well. So the court is taking all those factors into consideration, but it doesn't appear that again, there's many other factors in this particular matter, and that's not to minimize any testimony, but again, just to reflect that that there is nothing that stands out that is not covered by the other particular factors in this matter. The court would note, as I should have mentioned, I had just happened to see in the notes that Graceland is doing well in school, that she appears to like the Marshall schools, that the grandmother testified that when she'd have tests, that they would help her study for those tests. And she seemed to be really invested in that school district. So the court takes that into consideration as to the prior factor, but I wanted to mention that as well. In this particular matter, as I do, and as I look at all of the testimony and the factors, the court is firmly convinced in this matter that it would be in the best interest of Graceland to have joint legal custody, so that the parties would be involved in making important decisions in her life, that they would have to contact and communicate with each other in doing so. And so the court was so ordered. As it relates to physical custody, I went through the various factors and some of the testimony, not all of it, but it does appear in this particular matter, and I'll state to the parties that we don't look at the best interest factors and simply utilize them as, like, say, a baseball box score. So this person gets this, and hits, runs, errors, etc. That we, in fact, the court can give a disproportionate consideration to various factors, and in fact, all the factors are not weighed equally. But when the court does this, taking into account, again, all of the factors that I've discussed and all that's been testified to, it does preponderate, if you would, in favor of the plaintiff father. So the court will grant to the plaintiff physical custody in this matter. The court will grant to the defendant standard parenting time, and I'm doing that only because of the distance involved, in that the parties have had to meet at a halfway point. That, again, there's been discussion about the difficulties of transporting her between the states. That obviously happens, but they've been able to work that out. And again, that speaks to both of their involvement and their dedication to Graceland in this particular case. But it does appear that that is appropriate, looking at all of the factors, that she would be in the plaintiff's custody and then have that standard parenting time with the defendant mother. And obviously the court would always, as I do, state that the parenting time should be at all times and places mutually agreeable. So if that can be extended from time to time, it should be extended. But again, if the parties cannot agree, then it would be the standard alternating weekends. I'm not going to award any midweek because, again, obviously that would not be effective, being the distance between the parties. But if the defendant would happen to be up in Michigan, in Marshall area, that she would have an opportunity to then visit with Graceland if she was in the area, whatever night that might be. Alternating holidays, standard holidays, one half of the summer vacation period, one half of the Christmas vacation period, alternating spring break, based upon Graceland's school schedule. Court would order in this matter child support consistent with the income of the parties. the court would note that the plaintiff had testified his income was approximately, gross was approximately 55,000 last year. Although he's had an increase in this particular year, the court would note that we didn't have any testimony about that particular amount. The court is going to take into consideration the testimony of the defendant as to her income. She states busy weeks, busy season, she could make $800, slow as $300, but that in 2022, she grossed slightly under $16,000. That's working 24 to 25 hours per week. Court is going to take that amount, that 16,000, as a basis for calculating child support. I do note that is low because, again, her hours are low, but she says she could work more time if she wants. But the court is taking that into consideration to offset against the increase in income of the plaintiff that we have not taken into consideration. So that amount will be, again, considered. Mr. Robinson, you can calculate support based upon that particular amount of income. With that, I think that addresses all of the issues the court needs to address today. Is there anything, Mr. Robinson, that the court has failed to address or needs to address before we conclude?
Just a point of clarification, Your Honor. Does the court want us to continue the provision that provides that the parties will meet halfway?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I probably should have mentioned, I mentioned that the parties were doing that and that they were cooperating in that regard. And so the intent is obviously that they would do that because that eliminates more driving for both of the parties if they were to have to, like if the defendant was to have to pick her up and then the plaintiff was having to go all the way and pick her up, it's easier for the parties to meet at a halfway point. It appears that they have been cooperating to do that. So I have no problem that that would, again, continue.
And would it be, as long as the parties don't object, would the court be okay with making child support effective, say, October 1st, to give time for the order to get entered? And
that's fine, Mr. Robinson. That's I would normally do it the date of trial, but that's fine. I think the amount is going to be somewhat insignificant, so it's not going to be substantial, and apparently it's not. There hasn't been demonstrated that there's that substantial amount of need for that.
okay. No, I have nothing else, Your Honor.
Okay. Ms. Heitz, is there anything you believe that the court has failed to address or needs to address before we conclude?
Just for clarification, half the summer, is that supposed to be every other week, or is that just agreed upon if, a month on and a month off works fine? Is that just agreed between me and Tyler?
I will leave that up to the parties to work out if they can because of the distance. Typically, if you were in the same town, you would do it on an alternating weekly basis, but obviously that's going to be a substantial more travel. I'll leave it up to the parties to agree. If you can't agree, then you can bring it back before the court, and the court will make a determination at that particular time. So what I would tell you is to come into next spring, kind of etch it in stone if you could early on what you're going to do maybe in March or April, so that we know going into summer. If you can't come to an agreement, then you'd have time to file a motion, bring it before the court, and then we could decide it at that point.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
Anything else, ma'am?
No.
Okay, thank you. That will conclude the matter, and best of luck to both of you. I hope everything works out, and you do, as I say, you have a wonderful child in Graceland, and I think that based upon what I've heard, that you both have her best interest at heart, and I'm looking forward to again. I guess I say looking forward to not seeing either of you again, because I think that you're going to cooperate and you're going to be able to work those particular things out. And so I just wish you the best, and you're free to go. Have a good day.